This lesson we're going to talk about void functions. A void function is a function that does not return a value, but instead is called just for the effect that the computation inside the function definition executes. The functions we've looked at so far have all been what are called value returning functions. They return an int or a string or a bool. But void functions do not return values. We use them only for their effect. As we get into the course more, we'll be looking at more complex examples of void functions. But for now, I'm just going to show you a very simple example. Let's say that we want to have a greeting that we want to print in certain places. We can do that by creating a void function. So let's say we want to have a greeting to a person. It can be a first name or a last name or a whole name, whatever. So to create that greeting, we write void and then greeting and then the parameter. Void simply tells the compiler that there's not going to be a return value for this function, but instead it's just going to execute the statements that are in the function body. So let's do something like this. Let's do, we want to do, well, we'll do cout, yes. So we'll do some asterisks. Maybe another row. And then maybe 1, 2. Then the name, so we'll do it like this. And we may have to adjust when we're done here. I'm not one on spending a lot of time trying to figure out the exact placement of these things. Just get it written, and then you can go back and fix it after you've run it a couple of times. Oops. Okay, so there's our function definition. So notice that there is no return value. Everything is simply executable. So to use the function, we simply call it. Just like so. That's going to really mess up our greeting because Cynthia is going to be way too long for these asterisks, but let's run it anyway just to see. Not too bad. We could actually figure out a formula of how many characters there are and how many left to do. Notice that we went one too many on the bottom side of that anyway, so let's fix that real quick. I got off by 1. And it looks like we can add a third one there. And that's only going to work for that particular name. So void functions, again, are used only for the not the side effect, I almost said side effect, the computation, the execution of the statements inside the body of the function. Greetings are one good example of that. Another good example we're going to look at in another lesson or two is a thing called swapping values. And after we learn about scope and local scope and function scope and some of the different levels of scope, we'll talk about how to use a void function to swap values. But for now, we're just going to leave it at that, and we'll wrap up this lesson by indicating that we use void functions when we want to have a function call, but we just want to execute a set of statements, not to actually compute some sort of return value.